The Bengals didn't just add Brian Cook to their safety room this offseason. They signed another veteran as well, a former starter for a quality defense not too long ago who just last year was one of several players to record a pick six against the Bengals. He is going to play a decent amount of football for this defense this year, but we may still be underestimating just how large of a factor he could become. I'm John Sheeran of A to Z Sports Cincinnati. This is A to Z Sports Cincinnati, covering your Cincinnati Bengals throughout the 2026 offseason. And before we get into this video, guys, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. It allows us to help make more videos like this as we really close down the final dead weeks of the offseason as we ramp up into training camp. And early next week, we are going to do a Q&A session on this channel. So drop it in the comments any questions that you may have about the Cincinnati Bengals. It could be literally anything about the team. Everything is on the table, and maybe one of your questions will be answered. It has been a fun offseason if you're a Bengals fan looking at the moves that this team has made, and it all started with signing Brian Cook from the Kansas City Chiefs. He was a Cincinnati native, or he is a Cincinnati native, and he played his final 2 years of college football for the University of Cincinnati, and now he's coming back home hoping to lead the Bengals to their first ever Super Bowl title. But a few weeks after that happened, after they also signed defensive end Boy Mafe, defensive tackle Jonathan Allen, and really when they were in the beginning stages of figuring out if they could trade for Dexter Lawrence, the Bengals also signed another safety in former New England Patriots second-round pick Kyle Dugger. And when Dugger first signed, my initial reaction was, oh, so the Bengals are probably not going to draft a safety pretty early in the NFL draft. It turns out that they were still pretty interested in drafting Caleb Downs, and he may have been the pick if they had still held on to the 10th overall pick and not traded it for Lawrence altogether. But that trade did happen. The Bengals didn't have a first-round pick, and they didn't even end up taking a safety at all with their 7 picks that they ended up having in the 2026 draft. So Dugger signed a minimum 1-year deal. He's going to be the third safety. At least he is the third safety on the depth chart right now. And while that deal is pretty inconsequential, and yeah, they could move on from him this offseason or at the end of this offseason if he doesn't end up being the guy that they want him to be, but he is not a no-name player. He is not a guy that you would typically see sign a minimum 1-year deal. As I mentioned, Dugger was drafted in the second round of the 2020 NFL draft by the New England Patriots. He was actually taken a handful of spots after the Bengals took T. Higgins at the top of that round. And he was a pretty early pick considering where he went to college, which was Lenore-Ryan. I don't think a lot of football fans can point where that university is on a map. But just like any small school early round NFL draft prospect, the guy was a freak athlete. He was 6 foot, around 220 pounds. He ran under a 4.5 40 in the 40-yard dash. He jumped over 11 feet in the broad jump. Simply put, he was a height, weight, speed, explosion freak coming out of college. And teams with coaches who can get the most out of those players, they will not be afraid of investing early round picks in them. And of course, in 2020, the New England Patriots are still being coached by Bill Belichick. He was essentially the team's general manager. And Belichick got to work with him right away, putting him all over the place with the Patriots defense. He was taking snaps in the box, at free safety, slot cornerback, outside cornerback, all along the defensive line as an edge. He was used all over the field. And that was pretty much the case for the first 3 years of Dugger's career, in which he was a full-time starter for the Patriots. He ended up having 7 interceptions by the time his third year concluded. He was looking like a true cornerstone piece to that Bill Belichick defense for the Patriots. The most recent 3 years of Dugger's career haven't been as good, and Dugger's been very open and honest about that since coming to Cincinnati. Obviously, there was major coaching changes with Bill Belichick being replaced by Jared Gerard Mayo, and then, of course, by Mike Vrabel. And then last year, during Vrabel's first season, he was traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And again, there's just a lot of turmoil, a lot of changes, a lot of schematic differences, a lot of differences in terms of his alignments and his usage. He played more free safety in his final couple years with the Patriots, and just his overall tape was just not as good as it used to be when he first started his career. But despite all that, he's coming to a team that hasn't really had quality safety play since Jesse Bates was last year and Von Bell was still in the prime of his career. It's been a few years since the Bengals have had any stability at this position, and Kyle Dugger comes with the history of providing that for another defense. And that's exactly why he could be the guy that many fans need to pay more attention to as training camp ensues, as the preseason goes on, and as the regular season progresses. If the guy in front of him on the depth chart is not playing up to snuff, there's no reason why the Bengals shouldn't have a short leash and see what Dugger can do as a starter instead. And of course, I'm not talking about Brian Cook being that starter. I'm talking about Jordan Battle. I, for one, have not been a fan of about how the Bengals have used and really played out the first 3 years of Jordan Battle's career. I mean, even in the draft, like they had him atop their board in the second round, but they took DJ Turner because they needed a cornerback, and then they traded down a few spots because he was still there. And they're like, "Are we really going to take a safety this early in the draft?" Well, he's one of your top players. He is your top player on the board, and might as well just go beat PA at that point. So they traded down a handful of spots and it just ended up taking Jordan Battle, even if they felt like they didn't need a safety at the time. Well, turns out in 2023, Nick Scott wasn't it. Dax Hill certainly wasn't it at safety. They finally played Battle towards the end of that season, and he looked pretty promising. And it looked like that was going to springboard him into a solid sophomore season in 2024. But then he gets put behind Von Bell in the depth chart, and they bring him back for Luna Rumo's final year. And Von Bell is a shell of himself at that point in his career. And Battle just gets buried. And I really feel like that had an impact on him as he entered his third year when he was finally a full-time starter. But it was just completely up and down. The inconsistencies were very, very prevalent. He was just not a reliable tackler. He found the ball a lot of times. He created 6 turnovers, but in terms of who he was as a whole for a full-time starter for the first time in his career, it was not enough. And again, I don't really blame all of that on him, considering the trials and tribulations that he had to overcome for the first 2 years of his career. He should have been on the field a lot more to get that very much needed development before he was fully counted on in a year in which the defense was supposed to take this massive leap under first year defensive coordinator Al Golden. So I do give grace to Battle, despite him being the center of some of the worst plays the Bengals defense made last year. But now in year 4, in a contract year, second year as a starter, second year under this scheme, there are no excuses. Battle needs to play a lot more consistent and really earn his standing as a cornerstone piece for this defense. He's playing in a contract year. I don't think he's going to get extended, despite the fact that it seemed like early in the offseason, every coach who talked about him completely raved about him and talked about him like he was going to be a long-term piece for this franchise. I'm not sure that they're there yet. They still have more important decisions yet to make with DJ Turner, Dax Hill, and Miles Murphy just on that side of the ball. And while the talk surrounding Battle has been mostly positive, he still needs to go out there and prove it. And I feel like because there is now a capable veteran who has proven himself in the league when he had some stability to him with the New England Patriots, the fact that Kyle Duggar is here now breathing down his neck, I think it does put a lot of pressure on Battle to perform really early on in the season before potentially he gets yanked for another guy who's older than him. And I don't think that that's what the Bengals want. I think that they envision a defense and a scheme in which both Battle and Duggar can coexist, and Duggar can do some of the things that he's best at closer to the line of scrimmage, being in the box, helping on the slot because there isn't a stable, steady starter at that position just yet. I think they want to give Duggar exposure on the defense while playing on the field at the same time as Battle. I don't think that they want Duggar to just start at safety if Battle struggles, because that would just make their defense worse with having one fewer competent player out there who just hasn't proven himself. But the whole reason why, even after Brian Cook signed, a lot of fans and analysts projected the Bengals drafting Caleb Downs is because it's not that hard to upgrade from Jordan Battle, considering who the player he's been for the first 3 years of his career. And there's still more development for him to achieve before his rookie contract expires, before the Bengals truly have to make a decision on his future. So I think the Duggar signing was not only wise in the sense of giving the Bengals another versatile chess piece to help them out to coexist with Battle, it gives them a contingency if Battle still doesn't display the consistency that he needs to next to his new running mate in Cook. A lot of attention for the Bengals defense is going to be centered around the nickelback spot. Who's starting in the slot? It's going to be during training camp, the preseason, and probably in the early parts of the regular season, unless someone really truly does step up. But I think more attention needs to be put at safety next to Brian Cook. Jordan Battle needs to show up every single day and really prove that he is the number 2 in that group. Because if not, Kyle Duggar's right there. He's got thousands of snaps to his name. He's played in many different defenses at this point in his career. He even stepped up last year when he picked off Joe Flacco and ran it back for a touchdown when he was with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He can play, and he can push Battle if needed. And I don't think this is a competition the Bengals want to have, but if they need to have it, they can do it now. But like I said at the top of the video, make sure to drop in the comments your Bengals questions that could be answered in next week's mailbag. Talk to you then.